Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Facilities Management Times podcast. And today I'm talking to a very special guest, MG, and I was trying to figure out, Michael, how I would introduce you first and I thought of three key things. One, a serial entrepreneur, if I look at your LinkedIn profile. All right. The other is obviously you are also a host of a podcast called PropTech Ramble. And obviously, there's something probably that's going to be the most important role of all as a CEO and founder of Metrikus. So, MG, really a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Umesh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. And for the benefit of the listeners, we're going to talk about a subject that's, I think, has been gaining momentum across globally, but perhaps becoming more relevant for UK and the region, given whatever is happening around the energy space. But we'll dive into that, which is around net zero. What are the opportunities and challenges, and specifically looking at an industry that's so close to our heart, which is facilities management. But before all of that, MG would really love for you to tell a bit about yourself. Although I don't think you need any introductions, but still a bit about yourself.
So COO and co-founder of Metrikus, did a management buyout of the company that I was running beforehand and created Metrikus, pure software as a service business. Middleware API are some of our strengths, and obviously we're hardware agnostic. So solutions and services to customers, the most important thing for us. So we're hardware agnostic. So you're not getting a point solution when you work with Metrikus. So it depends on who you are and what you want, whether that's energy monitoring, BMS monitoring, or occupancy or capacity or smart cleaning. We can do it through the hardware partners we have and deliver a solution to a customer.
Awesome.
We're doing a lot more of that through partners and staying true to our roots of software company and making sure we develop the software faster and faster and enable it to do more and more for our partners and our end customers. So yeah, that's kind of who we are and what we do.
That's super awesome. And a bit about yourself. How did you end up doing what you're doing? And I get overwhelmed when I look at your LinkedIn profile, mate. So
I'm a Sparky by trade, so I was an electrician many years ago in Australia.
Wow.
And then dipped into electrical engineering for a bit, and then the guy I was working with at the time said you need to get into something called IT many moons ago, over probably 30 years ago, and so got into IT. Doing infrastructure, and then built data centers, got into the networking side, and then into wireless, and then into operations and software, and kind of here we are today at Metrikus. So it's been a good journey. You always learn. If you don't continue to learn, I don't think you can grow and provide other people with some helpful advice and guidance when they need it. So
true that.
I'm still learning.
That's super awesome, man. But by the way, does the age run in reverse order for you?
Does age? Yeah, I'm only getting younger. I'm not getting older.
That's exactly 30. You said 30 years. I said that's like so untrue. No, but super awesome, man. That's really commendable and yeah, I mean, that's actually a perfect setting for us to really dive into something. And probably what strikes me, and I didn't know that you basically started as an electrical engineer and kind of moved up in the overall strategic space. Now what you're looking at, so probably no one else or very few people would understand the space from the perspective of what we're really going to be talking about than probably you. So just wanted to move and going into the first question, right? Like, I mean, I've seen some of your posts, and everyone, like, net zero is kind of being talked about, but I really wanted to take a 0 feet view from you. How real is the net zero opportunity when we look at the built environment, and probably from the context of maybe global, but then a bit of UK context as well?
Yeah, I think, UK, there's a big opportunity, right? But there's a big difference between net zero and carbon neutral as well. So the to help people get to net zero, there's only so much we can do to help them get to net zero, right? So everything we can do, we will help with, and it is a huge opportunity in the UK and globally, as you just said. Helping them. Take building management systems. We have not connected to a building and to a building management system where we've been able to help people make savings. Every single building has something wrong with it. We were just looking at a building in New York where I was last week at the BMS, and it's configured differently on every floor. And this is a big building. So you can take lots of little small steps to help to get to net zero, but we are not the net zero silver bullet, but we can help, right? We can help, but the opportunity is huge. You know, we've got a case study out with Xempla where we put people counting sensors and indoor air quality in their building in Madrid. And what we were seeing from the people count and the indoor air quality in winter, they were heating the building and there was nobody coming in for hours. And then they were heating the building after everyone left. So Xempla said, please turn the BMS on later and turn it off earlier. And they're saving thousands, tens of thousands. So those things, that opportunity exists within every company. So the net zero opportunity is huge. It's just figuring out how you help your customers with the bit you can help them with.
Makes sense.
As I said, we're not a silver bullet, but it's big.
True that.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. I think you're quite right. I mean, to be very fair, there are so many stakeholders who are going to be involved in service providers for an organization to really go net zero or even to the extent. But interesting when you say about building management system and the fact that it's been underutilized or not utilized at all. Why do you think that's there? I mean, like, and then I mean,
well, I don't think it's necessarily underutilized. I just think they are configured once when the building is put in,
right?
And then the building is changed and refurbed, and walls are taken down and new walls are put up, and it's never reconfigured for that new space.
Got it.
If it has been, it would be one of the very few buildings that we've seen. So, you know, and we connect to BMSs every week. So it's not so much that they're underutilized, it's just that they're not utilized correctly and they're not configured correctly and they're not maintained correctly. Now, that's not to say there aren't some companies out there trying to do a great job, but when facilities management is one of the areas where people want to cut costs more than anything else, it's probably the wrong place to cut costs these days, right? It is the area that they should put more focus into, because that can help with your net zero journey. You know, getting someone in to look at your BMS, getting someone to reconfigure it, getting an expert in, getting someone that's independent of who you probably already have is also probably a good idea, you know. So even if they just make recommendations and they say, here, whoever maintains it, you should do this, and we've done that before for customers as well, right? Not because we're a BMS company, but because the BMS software side of our platform, we have a BMS kind of legend, a guy called James Palmer, who's been in the industry over 25 years, and he just looks at things and sees things and says, right, here's some recommendations, and we'll recommend it to anybody. They don't have to do it, but there's recommendations to be made every single building we've ever touched. So
that's interesting. And I mean, and that takes me to my second question. When we say, obviously, like we quite rightly said, net zero and carbon neutral obviously are two different facets, but kind of interchangeably used. I mean, you know, but and so what's the traction that we've been seeing or you've been seeing, and not limited to Metrikus? Like what's changed? Has something changed over the last 6-12 months, if at all?
I think the regulations that are coming out, like in the UK, SECR, Streamlined Energy Carbon Reporting, Local Law 97 in New York, you know, California's just released one as well. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but regulations coming in to try and help drive net zero, and there's an impetus now. When somebody says, or a body or a board or a council or somebody says, we would like you to follow these parameters and help us get to net zero, everyone says, yeah, no problem, we'll do that, we'll get around to it. When there's a fine attached to it, like there is with Local Law 97, and it's a big fine, and the date is coming for when it needs to start, people will then pay attention and people will get shit done. So that is what's happening. What has happened in the last 6 months is more regulation, more requirements to help drive to net zero, because there are fines related to it. You shouldn't have to use the stick. There should be a carrot there as well, right? But if sometimes you have to use the stick. So that's what I think has changed. The requirement to do this, and ESG is all over the news, right? the big SIs and the big consultants are all hiring ESG experts. Some of them are even acquiring ESG companies, and some of them are just startups, right? Because there is a massive requirement to help people drive to net zero. And, the E and the S are easy for companies like Metrikus to help with. The G, the governance bit, a little bit harder because that's reliance on the business. But the E and the S, there's a lot of quick wins, and if you spend the more time and attention you spend on it, and if you understand the objectives of the company, the more you can help, right? So that the traction we're seeing is to help people look at the environmental side and the energy side and the health and well-being of their people side. So that's the big parts, and that's the traction we're seeing. And outside of us, talking to some of our competitors, which I do, and people in kind of the same space, some partners of ours that also resell other people's services, they're seeing a lot of traction in that space as well. I mean, yeah, you only have to look at people like Airthings and the amount of sales they're having for their indoor air quality sensors going up and up and up, right? So that's one of the things that tells you that this space is growing rapidly.
So essentially, it's kind of becoming, and probably always was, is more of a regulation-driven and a compliance-driven market than anything else.
I think that's what will happen. Yeah,
but that's a good thing. And just coming back to one of the points you mentioned about the BMS, I mean, and this is an interesting. You said that if you're an asset owner, you should get someone in neutral to who you already have. Do you mean the original equipment manufacturers or the people who actually?
No, I wouldn't get the original equipment manufacturers in. I would get someone neutral. The original equipment manufatures, even if they may want to sell you more. They may want to sell you more kit, whereas someone neutral can say you might need one of these, two of these, and you just need to reconfigure the rest. Someone with a good salesperson may just say, well, you need a whole new BMS and we can sell you this new one which does A, B, and C. And you may not necessarily need that, right? You don't want to just throw everything out to get new. The net zero also, comes along with net zero is the circular economy, right? So let's not try and throw everything, the baby out with the bathwater. Let's change what we need to, maintain what we can so that we're creating the least amount of waste. So
no, that sounds good. Asset owners and investors are making a move. Probably they probably are, obviously, as you rightly said, they're more liable. Asset owners are the ones who would end up being penalized if they don't really meet the requirement or the compliances. I mean, we've been working a lot with facility management companies. We don't yet directly go to asset owners, and across Australia, UK, Middle East, we have found different proactive range of approach of FM companies. How do you see? I mean, how are FM companies really making the use of opportunity? Do you use them as a channel? Are you engaging with them, or what do you generally see in the market? Is there an opportunity for them to be really more strategic because of the fact that they operate and maintain the assets? So it's kind of really in their interest to be able to dovetail with asset owners. Are you really seeing that?
We are, yes. We're working with a company called IREP out of the Middle East. Run by two guys, Kenny and Kamran, and they're very proactive. They operate. They've got offices in 46 countries. They deliver services to over 80 countries. They've come to us and said, we need to help our customers. We'd like to deliver better services to our customers, and we need to help our customers on the journey with ESG and net zero. So, people like our companies like IREP and the guys in IREP are hugely proactive. They are the leaders in the market, and there will be more and more companies like IREP. We're also talking to a large US partner as well. I can't say their name at the moment; it's under NDA. But they're another industry leader. You'll have the laggards. You'll have the ones who do it just because they have to or when they're pushed. But the ones who are leading, like IREP, they will win in this space. And as you said, they have a very important role. Some of their customers are massive. Right. And they have a proper seat at the table because they don't just do cleaning. They look at, IREP do energy monitoring. They already maintain BMS systems. They also are looking at smart cleaning to help reduce their own costs towards their customers in the cleaning part. Now, a lot of FM companies say, why the hell would I do that? I'm going to reduce some of my revenues there. But if you can add additional services in and layer new services in if you're smart about it. So you might dip in some areas, but you'll gain in others. And it's not all about the money all the time to try and make as, if you don't make money, you don't have a business, right? But there's other ways to make money with your customers if you've got a very good partnership. So if you're proactive, I think you'll win. If you're not, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot of facilities management companies go away. We had the big one disappear in the UK a while ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, which was Carillion, and I think others will follow. I mean, that was completely different kind of scenario. But if you're not proactive and you don't do the right things, I think we'll see more FM companies drop away because
kind of happening.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I mean, and again, point is, as you rightly said, FM have the owners, but again, a lot of people, you mentioned that a lot of FM leaders, and again, to be fair, I think every orthodox company every orthodox industry thinks the same. When you have your revenues coming in, when you have your business as usual scenario, absolutely okay. Why do you disrupt it? You mentioned about the fact that, okay, you might have, by reducing the number of people you put there or optimizing your cost, you might optimize you might reduce your revenue, but there lies an opportunity to upsell other services which you have not been selling.
Correct.
And that's kind you do that. This, but I was in the UK twice in a couple of months before. We've been ramping up ourselves, but a few of the top FM companies always come back and say, hey, these are good boardroom conversations, but nothing's moving as far as the asset owners are concerned. I mean, do you get a sense of that it's an excuse, or it's actually the case that all of this is a boardroom conversation, but not really, not enough to move the needle on the ground?
I think it is moving the needle, but unfortunately, the space is a slow mover. So it's always been a slow mover. So even if the needle moves a bit, that's moving, right? Sometimes it doesn't move at all. I think it's moving, but it's moving very slowly. So I think that will accelerate over the coming years. I think you'll see it, I think you'll see it go from, you're not sure it's moving, but it is, but it's moving so slowly you can't see it, to actually you can then start to see it moving. But they are boardroom conversations. People are having good conversations about it. How much of that is turning into action? If you were to say, out of 100% of that, how much is turning into action? I would say it's maybe 5% of that's turning into action at the moment. But I think that will grow over the coming years. And the smart facilities management companies and the people who want to do more and are trying to do more and are implementing smart cleaning and adding additional services, yes, they might lose some revenue because they don't have to have the same amount of people or staff on site for their customers, but they'll win more customers because of that. So they'll make up that lost revenue elsewhere. And also, if they're helping with the energy and the ESG side, because they're adding new services, then they've got additional revenue on top. So I don't believe that they'll ever lose money. They might see it flatten out, but then if they start to win more customers because they're doing smart cleaning or smart FM, then they'll eventually have more customers.
And I think more importantly, that's a myth, or probably I think technology has been sold the wrong way in the FM world.
Where it's been sold the wrong way a lot. Yeah.
So it's like the reduction in people. I don't see it from that. I said, if you as you rightly said, your net resources will always grow, but you will have fewer people per building or per portfolio or per site. But that effectively does not mean that there'll be a reduction per se. It's like how you're using. And one of the things is, how do you get an opportunity to upskill some of them? So that's a whole together a different conversation. But absolutely, I think that's one way where FM companies can really augment their revenue and diversify, versus saying this is the only way we're going to make revenue. But not all FM, as you rightly said, not all FM companies are. There are some who are leaders. There are some who are really trying to get started, and some who really probably don't care. But let's concentrate on that one segment, which are kind of emerging in category, not in a leadership position, but they're wanting to do something. Would you have what would you say, as a vendor, as a partner, as someone who's seen the industry through thick and thins across the board spectrum? What would you have a framework for them and say, if you haven't started till now, here is what you could do to still be in the race?
If you were starting a net new company in this space?
No, if you are an FM company, you've been in FM business, but you've not.
Oh, right, okay. But how do you get into technology?
Or probably make use of net zero as an opportunity to say that, okay, this might be an opportunity for us. But so how do you really do something? Or
I think my opinion is you need to look at yourself as a business first and what you think you can offer, and then have conversations with your customers about their priorities. And then if you've got some of the people in your business that can help meet some of those already, then great. If you don't, then go away and figure out what you might need to, start to take on, and the people you might need to hire and the services you might need to deliver to figure out how you help your customers. Now, there is going to be a capital spend there at some point, but again, it's weighing up the pros and the cons and evaluating the risks and say whether you do it or not. But if the companies who've got good relationship with their customers, if they can ask them about their priorities and they know what their priorities are, then that can help inform where they should possibly start. Because you can't just go out there and say, we've got everything to help you do net zero, because companies have different priorities. So I would say, look at your customer base, speak to your customer base, understand their priorities, and then come back in your business and look at yourself and then figure out what you can do already or who you might need to partner with to help deliver some of those services, because customers know you can't deliver this all on your own, right? They're not silly. But if you're already a trusted partner, then you go and vet partners and you bring in a trusted partner and you work well together, then the customer is going to be happy for you to, come in and help deliver a service or a solution that's going to help them start on their journey to net zero.
Makes sense. That's a good enough recommendation for folks who haven't really started Gate. Probably one last question before we move to a sort of a rapid fire. I have 2-3 interesting questions for you, so I hope that the listeners would really get to know the other side of MG.
No problem.
But before we go to that, I mean, one of the conversations that I've been having with a lot of people is, Umesh, what's happening is there's probably enough money which can go in for innovation matrix for FM companies, where you do 1 or 2, 3 trials and just let it go, use the PR, and stuff like that, but not really enough to scale across the portfolio or maybe it's a repeat question, but because you travel so much, you've been to the US a lot, work a lot in the UK and in the region. Have you seen that this change as well, at least across the leaders? The ones who were doing trials and stuff a couple of years back or 3 years back, are they sort of amplifying their investment thesis around all of this from the technology perspective, being an FM company?
Yes, is the answer. And the reason being is they're working a lot on business case and ROI. Unless you do that, no one's just going to keep buying because you say it's an awesome product. There has to be a payback. There has to be an ROI for the end customer. Even if there's not a massive ROI like 10 or 20 times, but if it's going to help them win customers and keep their current customers in their buildings, and it kind of nets out for them, then that's still a good thing to do, right? If they're going to lose a ton of money and it's not going to help them at all, then they're never going to do it. But helping them understand the business case or working with them on a business case is even better, right? If they'll open their books and say, look, we need this type of return, this is our spend here, how can you help here? The more information you have to help your customer and help them with the business case or the ROI, and if you can do that together, the more successful you'll be. But if it's just cost, and they can't net it out to zero or close to zero, then it makes it a little bit harder. Eventually, people will have to do it, even if there's a small loss involved. But generally, you can work this out to where you find a solution that can help deliver some form of saving and some form of optimization that will allow them to start to roll it out.
Makes sense. And probably I must say another question. We've seen probably over the last week or so, a lot of conversation around recession, the fact that pounds, this is specific to UK. Do you envisage?
I'm Australian, so I'll answer it as an Australian living in the UK. But yeah, go for it.
But again, from the country perspective, but I think Australia is probably also on the same boat right now. I mean, I think about, so you see any of these globally, derailing any of these efforts, or actually only amplifying these efforts?
I think hopefully amplifying. I mean, it depends how bad the recession is. I mean, the pound, pardon the pun, has taken a pounding in the last week, right? It's crashed. So, but I think this is the time where people will really look to see what cost savings can be made, and if you can help with cost savings in the initial piece, then you're still at the table. And then if there's longer conversations to be had, then you can have those as well. But I think everyone's going to have to tighten their purse strings, right? Because the energy costs are through the roof. So,
True that.
you know, there's James who works with us. He has a local pub near him, and the pub owner was saying their electricity bill was £8,600 a year, and at the moment it's sitting at £42,000 a
Oh my
year.
God,
So
that is
so
ridiculous. Yeah.
anything you can do, any business to help them reduce their energy costs, I think you're in for a win-win. And I think as the recession properly kicks in and we start to see the energy prices keep going up, this type of energy reduction and energy saving, and this is not hard to do, right? I posted a photo on LinkedIn the other day in New York, and then of the building, you know, over my
Oh yeah,
right
I
hand
think I saw
shoulder
that.
here.
Yeah.
Turn some lights off, people. That's not hard, right? I was about to swear, so I won't. But that is not hard. That's a no-brainer. Let's turn lights off, turn shit off in your buildings. You can help. You know, maintain or look at your BMS or have a review of your BMS. Have a look at your on-off of your BMS. I guarantee you can save some money. So that can help.
All right, so we'll take as an optimistic that you hope that
Oh
this
yeah,
does not
I think it
disrupt.
can only help. I think it can
True
only
that.
help,
True that.
and people just need to concentrate a little bit more. And and I don't mean you have to spend hours and hours on this. It's not going to be hard to find savings to help you in this current situation.
Awesome. That is super awesome. Now the fun part of it. And actually, to be fair and honest, this is the first time I'm trying. So if it goes well, then
No problem. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. That becomes all right. 3 questions for you. If not Metrikus, what would you be doing?
If not Metrikus, what would I be doing? If it didn't have to be pure work related and
it could
to
be
help
anything. It could be anything.
feed my wife and children and keep a roof over their head, I would have a sports charity to help people who can't necessarily be involved in sports that would love to be involved with sports. So people who are not able to afford to be involved in, you know, football, Aussie rules football, soccer football, cricket, wherever they are, helping young people become involved in sports because they love it and they want to be, but they just can't afford it.
Awesome. But by the look of the answer and the passion, I think that probably that's something that you can add. You manage a lot of things. I'm sure that's probably going to come through soon with Metrikus as well. I guess so.
That's further down the line when I've got a little bit more time, but it is something that I will do. I'm a sports nut, so yeah, I'd love to help people get into sport that would love to but just can't afford it.
Awesome. So second question, Unicon or probably a sustainable business, what would you pick?
Unicorn or a sustainable business? Ideally both, but I mean, there are some unicorns out there, but I'd rather have a sustainable business with lots of people who are very happy and growing and supplying services to customers.
That is super cool. And the third one, the last one, what is that one thing you would change or influence when it comes to the way startups in this industry collaborate with each other? Smart buildings.
It's a very good question. There's two sides to this, I think. One is from the hardware side, and the hardware side is that the hardware companies have all got these ongoing costs, and everyone probably who's heard me before speak about this knows it's the bane of my life, and it's the bane of my customer's life, which is the most important thing. Everyone has their own hardware. People don't want shitloads of gateways in buildings and hubs and things. They want one central place for everything to be consolidated, right? And at the moment, it's very fragmented. So if I could change anything on the hardware side, it'd be consolidation of infrastructure and people playing nicely together, so that you can stick it all on one gateway. And people like Cisco are trying to do that through their APs and loading software on, but that's probably what I would change. From a platform side, I would say it's people over promising and under delivering because it's giving us a bad name as an industry. People, once bitten, twice shy. Just do what it says on the tin. If you can't do it, don't say you can do it. But if you can do it well. Because the worst thing for us as an industry is people saying, I can, Michael walks up, the lights will come on, his room temperature will drop, and he sits down, and the only thing he has to do is breathe. That's unfortunately that's bollocks. So don't overpromise and underdeliver. Do what you do well, and then we can all win in this industry. And the sales to the customers won't be as hard as sometimes it is once they've been through a partner that overpromised and underdelivered.
That sounds about right. And I think probably one thing I would like to add maybe is that founders should talk more often. I mean,
we don't. I think part of that is because we're a hugely busy, industry, and we're all trying to feed ourselves and win customers, but the founders should talk more. I agree with that. That's quite a good one.
Hopefully it starts with this, as people see this. But thank you so much, MG. It's a quick recap. I mean, obviously, MG believes that the net zero opportunity in, everything happening around ESG, net zero, carbon neutrality is real, and everything that's happening around economy right now should only amplify that. There was a bit of an impetus and a motivation to be given to the FM companies. If you've not made a move till now, probably now is the right time to make a move. You might see a bit of revenue dip versus what you were actually regularly doing, but there is amplification to be had elsewhere. And we saw we got to know the other side of MG as well. Watch out for him to take out a sports charity, help people who want to love playing sports but probably aren't able to, and that's where MG is going to probably pitch in, maybe in a few months or a few years, once he's probably made the best use of his time at Metrikus. It was awesome talking to you, MG. Thank you so much for taking time out. Know it's a very busy schedule you have, but really appreciate and hope this helps the listeners. Any parting words that you would like to say to the listeners?
Well, thank you, Umesh, for having me on, number one. And yeah, I think, look, these are all just my opinions, and I may be right and I may be wrong. If you ask my wife, generally I'm wrong more than I'm right, but that's a family thing. But I think people listening, the right solution isn't always the all singing, all dancing solution, right? Take small steps to get to where you need to. And it's a journey. I've said this before, to get to where you need to, it's a journey. Choose your priority, number one, and then take it from there.
Thank you so much, MG. That is exactly how it is. And I hope that the listeners take a cue from this. And till the next episode, goodbye and see you again. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks, Umesh.